Hello, everybody. This is Pitch Gold Black here, and welcome back to. Did that start? I think it started. I see. Yep, it started. Hello, everybody. This is Pitch Gold Black here. We're off to a flying start, and today I'm going to be talking about the wonderful, wonderful masterpiece in Doctor Who canon, Fury from the Deep, with the wonderful Harry Williams Productions, or just Harry Williams. Say hello, mate.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back.
So, since this story has recently gotten announced as being animated, which I am so excited for, and I bet many other people are as well, because this story is just a masterpiece of a story, we thought it would be good to sort of take a look at the story in sort of preparation and build up to the animation itself.
But I've also got the rig on, but I decided to listen to the soundtrack because I do quite like it as a soundtrack. And I remember I've listened to it once before, and when I listened to that first time round, my opinions haven't really changed at all. I think it's still a fantastic, one of my favourites of all time, but an absolutely brilliant story. And it's really sad that hardly any of it exists apart from a couple of surviving clips.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, are brilliant, those clips.
The surviving clips themselves are fantastic. I have experienced the story in numerous ways. I've listened to the soundtrack several times. I've actually read the Target novelization twice, like the actual physical paperback. I've listened to the audio book once. And I've also recently watched the loose cannon reconstruction of the story in preparation for this review, which did such a fantastic job in recreating Fury from the Deep, I would have said personally, as it fully to its fullest possible extent to make the story as best as it can in the sort of reconstructed format it's presenting itself in. For example, the final battle that everybody has with the seaweed creature in the middle of it, almost all of that is recreated within the loose cannon reconstruction using existing footage from episode 6, which is fantastic. It's fantastic, the clips we have from the story, and I really like the way I re-experienced it recently with regards to the loose cannon reconstruction, because that reconstruction is amazing.
I think no matter what story it is, loose cannon always do a really good job of like not recreating, but like it is a reconstruction, but the reconstructions themselves are really good. Doesn't matter what story it is.
Yeah, and loose cannon are just truly one of a kind with regards to recreating Doctor Who stories. I mentioned this to Harry Williams a few weeks ago, but when they were recreating the evil of the Daleks, they actually went back to the very house that the original episodes were filmed in to film some sort of inserts for their recreation of the story, if you want to put it like that, or their reconstruction rather. So that they can.
I think they even went as far as getting actors in and dressing them up as close as they can.
They even got like a full Dalek prop and everything.
It just goes to show how much care got put into these recons.
I think the most notable one from Fury from Evil of the Daleks is the one where Victoria is sort of walking down a corridor and looks outside a window whilst being escorted by a Dalek. That's all recreated by loose cannon with actors. It's fantastic.
It is like incredible what they've done. But in regards to Fury from the Deep, now I haven't experienced the loose cannon recon. I've got it, but I haven't experienced it yet. But I think even as a soundtrack, I think it works really well. Now, for those of you who don't know, the soundtrack is quite difficult to get hold of.
Yeah.
So if you want to experience it, I reckon probably just download it from iTunes or just try and experience the story in any way you can, because it is arguably one of the best Doctor Who stories.
Currently, as of the sort of creation of this live stream, I recently was able to watch all 6 of the loose cannon reconstructions of the episodes from the story on Daily Motion out there on the internet. So as of the time of this stream, they're probably still out there unless they've been purged by the BBC or Stephen Moffat or something.
Yeah, this is the problem with the missing episodes, because they're not as accessible. Okay, we've got the Lost TV episodes set, but they are quite expensive.
Yeah, they are.
And even the original soundtrack, the radio collection stuff, is expensive. So
yeah,
it's quite hard to experience these stories in some way unless you buy the Target novelizations, which is always an idea.
Yeah,
but I'm sort of urging anyone to go and just, I don't think it matters what form you experience it in, just go out and try and watch it on Daily Motion or whatever, just get around to watching the story somehow.
Either ways you experience it, there is no real wrong way of experiencing Fury from the Deep, in my personal opinion, as it's a very rare case, maybe the only case I would have said, where both the original story and the Target novelization are both outstanding.
Yeah, I haven't read the Target novelization, which I'd like to at some point, but I can imagine it working in both sort of formats.
Yeah, it definitely works, and Victor Pemberton wrote the novelization as he did with the original TV episodes, and he got a special permitted extension from Target and WH Allen to extend the novelization a little bit, and he more than fully utilizes the 189 pages that the book fully utilizes all 189 pages the book has, and it is so fantastically written and just masterful, in my opinion, this Target novelization.
Yeah, it is one that I'd like to check out at some point. So shall we move on to the story itself and sort of go through maybe the episodes, or just talk about it as a whole?
Do you want to just talk about it as a whole and go through sort of certain points, or?
Yeah, you can do, yeah. There is one thing that I'd like to point out, which I did find out the other night, actually, whilst watching a documentary. I don't know if you know about this, but I think in the first episode, when they land on the beach or whatever, and then they start playing around with the phone or whatever, I think it is.
Yeah.
Apparently that was actually improvised.
Oh, right, okay.
That wasn't actually in the script. And when I found that out, I actually quite liked that, because it just sort of shows how much their relationship has grown as Doctor and companions. Yeah,
and sometimes sort of ad-libs and things that weren't in the script that the actors just do can add so much to a story on the whole as well, I would have said.
Yeah, just looking at the photos, telesnaps of the story, you can tell that it just screams base under siege. So this is the pinnacle of base under siege stories.
Yeah.
In my opinion, I'd say it's probably the ultimate base under siege story.
And I would probably agree with that personally. It is probably the ultimate base under siege story there is.
It's also incredibly atmospheric. The first episode, I think, really sets up the tone for the story really well. And I think each episode, I don't think it drags very often, really. I think it's got a really decent pace to it.
Yeah, I don't think the story drags at all personally, and I do think it does have a really good pace, and I will kind of agree with you there.
I think also what helps is the characters in there, because they're all very memorable and likeable characters, with the exception of Robson, who is just a bit of an arsehole.
Yeah.
He's in some classic Doctor Who stories, you always, and maybe in some new Who stories as well, you always get this one dickhead character.
Yeah,
and he's definitely that character.
Yeah, John Robson, as his full name is given in the story, is just such just a very slimy Doctor Who character, as it were, and he is just so up his own arse throughout the entire story. It's kind of unbelievable to almost see the way he sort of crumbles and softens at the end, so to speak.
Yeah, he sort of loses his mind a bit because he's so paranoid about people.
Yeah,
he's assuming that people wanted to take Doctor and Jamie or whatever wanted to take his job or something like that.
Yeah, he's so deluded with his own pride at how much success he has gotten with regards to operations on the drilling rigs and what have you. Like it said in the story, that he spent like 4 or 5 years out on the rig, like living there with no like going to land or anything like that. Just 4 or 5 years living straight on one of the oil rigs. It was all gas rigs. It was
pretty much isolated from the world.
Yeah.
So that's probably had a massive effect on him.
Yeah.
When it comes to this story, like obviously it's 5 years before then, but at this point in this sort of setting, the start of the story is pretty much where he begins to lose the plot, basically.
Yeah, definitely.
I think the cliffhangers are also really strong throughout the story.
The cliffhangers throughout this story are just some of the best cliffhangers in Doctor Who history, I would have said, particularly the ones to episode 3 where I believe it's Maggie walks into the ocean on the beach.
Oh yeah, that is a really good cliffhanger. It reminded me of like a bit like the opposite of I know this is a weird sort of comparison, but
Sea Devils.
No, not necessarily that, but the Dalek invasion of Earth when the Dalek comes out of the water.
Oh yeah, that's a point.
The other way around. I don't know why I made that comparison. I don't even like that story, but it just reminded me
Same
of that.
here, it's all right. And episode 5 as well is just also has such an incredible cliffhanger to it as well. Come in, Doctor. We've been waiting for you.
I was just think this would also point the 2 engineers incredibly creepy.
Yeah. Oak and Quill are just unbelievable characters. They are so good. And
I like the idea of when they open their mouths and this gas comes out. I really like that idea.
Yeah. I think I may have even heard of some people say that their existing clip from episode 2 is one of the, if not the scariest scene in Doctor Who history, which I would say it's definitely up there. It's a very terrifying story in some respects, particularly that scene in other areas.
Another thing to mention is that this is Victoria Waterfield's final story, and what an ending story to go on.
Yeah, it is such. Not only is it an absolutely fantastic story for a companion to go out in, it's a very unique companion departure as well, because most Doctor Who companion departures in the show and in the entire canon of Doctor Who, I would say, can be very spontaneous. Victoria's is very slowly layered and built up. You kind of get brief glimpses of it in the first 2 episodes. It gets a bit more heavy in episode 3, and then it just sort of ramps up in episodes 4 and just comes to that devastating and emotional climax in episode 6.
I really respect Victor Pemberton for doing that, because like you say, it's very unique in terms of a companion departure. It's not like Dodo just fucking off in one of the episodes and just forgotten about.
Yeah.
This one's really, the seeds are sown at the very first episode.
Yeah.
And there's a bit of the story where Victoria's like, why do we always have to end up in somewhere that's dangerous?
Yeah, why does there always have to be fighting?
Yeah, and you can sort of see that she's really thinking about not leaving. And even though she hasn't really got anywhere to go back to, I think she likes the characters of Harris and Maggie, and she wants to stay with those people, I think.
Yeah.
But she wants to stay with some of the characters in the story. Because the thing is, the characters in the story, for the most part, are really likeable.
Yeah.
And you kind of want to be with them at the same time. It's kind of weird.
Yeah, definitely. All of the characters in this story are absolutely fantastic. And Victoria in particular is really a massive highlight of the story, I personally feel. And her departure is just so fantastic. And as I said, quite unlike any other in Doctor Who history.
The thing is, one of the reasons why I like Victoria so much is that, in my opinion, I'd say her only really bad story is the Ice Warriors. Everything else, from Eve of the Daleks to Timber the Sidemen to the Abominable Snowmen, Fury from the Deep, it's the Web of Fear, it's incredible, really. Like, there's barely any bad stories with her.
Yeah, there isn't any bad stories at all, I would have said, with the exception of the Ice Warriors, which I've only watched once, but need to again.
Yeah, I think it does need a rewatch. But like, she's gone from an incredible date story to one of the best companion departures. It's one of the most emotional ones. It's probably up there with Rose's departure.
Depending on your opinions of the stories as a whole, this has to be one of the best companion 10 years in the entire show, I would have said, because Evil of the Daleks is a fan favourite, Tomb of the Cybermen is a fan favourite, The Enemy of the World is really well liked, the Yeti stories are loved, and then this is loved as well. Her tenure is just so unbelievably consistent, I would have said, with regards to the general consensus.
Yeah, I think even when Deborah Watling wanted to leave, I think Patrick Troughton wanted to leave as well, because I think Pat Troughton and Fraser Hines were quite saddened that Deborah Watling said she was leaving.
Yeah.
And I think from this documentary I watched last night, I think Deborah Watling was saying that when she told Patrick Troughton that she was leaving, I think Patrick Troughton said he wanted to go as well. Like, he sort of had enough by that point. Obviously, he was commissioned for another season, so...
Yeah. And Jamie was, in season 6, Jamie was originally meant to get his companion departure in a story as well, but Patrick persuaded him to stay on until the end of the season.
Yeah, I'm kind of glad he did, to be honest.
Yeah.
But I agree with you that Victoria's one of the most consistent, or had one of the most consistent 10 years for a companion.
Yeah, without question.
Unlike the likes of Clara.
Oh, God, yeah. Oof.
But that's probably another video for another day.
That's another rant for another day. Jesus.
Oh, yeah, it can go on for hours. But, yeah, this story's, like, despite the fact, even though there is some location footage, it's mostly studio bound.
Yeah.
Even though it is studio bound, and some consider studio stories, some of them anyway, to be quite slow, because it's all like in a confined space, and they don't move around very much. This one, I think, because of the characters and everything, and the mystery surrounding it, I think it really helps drive the story forward. And despite the fact it is studio bound most of the time,
yeah,
it is really atmospheric, I think.
Yeah, it is so unbelievably atmospheric, and a unique sort of point I would like to sort of bring up is that music in Doctor Who can be a really good thing. It can very much help add to a story and make moments even better. And I felt Fury from the Deep's music really helped to add to the overall story, not only because it was really atmospheric and helped to add to the overall atmosphere of the story, but also because I really like how mechanical and manufactured sort of electronic sound that the music has, as that kind of helps add to the atmosphere even more when you consider it. When you consider the story is set in like a machine, basically, the entire story is basically just set in one massive complex of machines of gas drilling and what have you. I would have said.
Even even in like the soundtrack, I know it's a soundtrack, but you do really get a sense that this is a really like atmospheric story.
Yeah, and I think I have heard some people say that this was before the animation was announced. If Fury from the Deep was found, it would lose some of its atmosphere, as it really lends itself well to audio, which I do personally agree with to an extent, with regards to it lending itself quite well to audio.
Yeah, it's quite strange how that works, really, when there's a story that works so well on audio, but then if you watch it visually, it sort of loses that element.
Yeah, it's very paradoxical, I would have said, that point personally, with regards to it working very well on audio, because to me, this is one of the most visual missing episodes. So it's really weird to have a very visual missing episode work so well on audio at the same time. It's really weird, that, in my opinion.
I think it just shows how good of a story is, because it can work on those mediums. Forms of media.
It can work on all media. I
think one thing that I'd like to point out is how incredible the script is.
Oh yeah, the script is incredible.
Because there are some really memorable lines in this, especially in some of the cliffhangers.
Yeah, there's like some moments in the story where characters are having sort of shouting matches and arguments with other characters about how loyally they obey Robson's orders. And I remember one of them said to one of these sort of characters who was obeying Robson's orders, can you even blow your nose without permission or something like that? Or do you have to ask permission to blow your nose? It's a very good story overall, definitely, with regards to writing, and as you said, the script is fantastic, and I would agree to that.
If I was I don't know, script editor or whatever, somebody handed that to me, and like pitched the story, I thought this is kind of a bit silly and a bit over the top, but when you think about it, it works so well.
It works so unbelievably well, and it really does. It is quite a silly concept on paper, but it does. But the overall way Victor Pemberton writes the story is he manages to manipulate that.
I think also as well, the fact that it's in like this oil rigs, which is, I think the whole setting is very, obviously it's on Earth, like contemporary. Is it contemporary Earth? I think.
I think it is sort of on contemporary Earth.
It's very, you sort of believe in a weird way. You sort of believe all this sort of stuff is happening.
Yeah.
Because it's not like an over the top silly monster like the Ice Warriors or something.
No.
It's much more sinister than that.
Yeah, it is really sinister, this monster overall, and the way Victor Pemberton fleshes out this monster as well is fantastic and very unique for a Doctor Who story, I would have said as well. I think it's in episode 3 or 4 that the Doctor and Victoria go back to the TARDIS to test one of the and with Jamie, one of the fronds of seaweeds they picked up from, I believe, Maggie's apartment sort of area within the complex. And the Doctor finds the seaweed monster within this history and myth and sort of folklore monster book he has in the TARDIS, establishing the fact that the seaweed creature has been seen for hundreds upon hundreds of years in the past of humankind, which adds a very unique and interesting edge and dynamic to the monster. I would have said personally, and that is quite unlike any other Doctor Who story, I would have said, with regards to the monster, almost like a precursor to what would come with Terror of the Zygons in a way.
It is a very interesting and unique monster, and I think it's something that it quite, not easily, but something that could be out there, but you almost believe it. It's very strange.
Yeah.
I think another thing to point out is, I don't know if we brought this up yet, but this is actually the first story which features the sonic screwdriver.
Oh yeah, it is, yes. And thankfully it's only used like once, and it's not like...
Oh, it's not like in the new series where they use it to
do everything.
Like lazy writing, basically.
Yeah.
They actually use it as a plot device, but in this story it's just used as a scientific tool, which
Yeah.
it is. That's what it should be, not something to get out of a near-death experience.
Yeah.
Which is a common theme that sometimes happened, I think, especially in the Matt Smith era, I think.
Yeah.
But it's quite a cool little mention, and I'm guessing Victor Pemberton is the original creator of it.
Yeah, probably.
Unless somebody gave him the idea and then he used that idea and just began the story was used. I'm not sure the sort of making of the sonic screwdriver, to be honest. Sort of unfamiliar of how it came about. But no, it's obviously came on to be such a massive part of Doctor Who and the new series, especially.
Yeah,
it's turned into some quite
questionable
toys.
Yeah.
So it's another fairly iconic part about the story.
Yeah.
I think you were telling me that you had a bit of a problem with episode 6, the helicopter scene.
Yeah, that wasn't as bad as I remembered it personally. I felt like originally that the helicopter scene where the Doctor is trying to get people back to the main centre rig to stop everything, I felt that was just like a really padded scene and just not very good and could have easily been cut from the story. And I would still retain that, but I would say it wasn't as bad as I remembered it, as I remembered it being not very much of a bearable scene, not bearable at all, but when I watched the loose cannon reconstruction, it was actually pretty bearable, but at the same time, I would say it that particular moments of the Doctor piloting the helicopter could have easily just been cut from the story, and it would have made no difference whatsoever.
I think just because of the fact that it had a helicopter in it, it sort of reminded me a little bit about the first episode of Enemy of the World a little bit.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Just sort of a little similarity, I guess, but obviously it's different, like completely different plot-wise.
Yeah.
But this story is, I kind of hope they don't they don't bring this monster back. I think this monster only works in this story.
Yeah.
it's a bit like Sutek, really. Even though it's not as memorable as Sutek, it's still a great monster.
Yeah, he's such a good monster. Definitely.
I don't know if Big Finish have done anything with it, or
I don't think they have. No, it's a rare case. Yeah,
because
Big Finish do everything.
Pretty much every character or monster they can grab their hands on.
The Paternoster gang. Ugh.
Oh god, yeah. Again, this is another video for another day.
Another rant.
Yeah, I love the characters in the story. I love the way it's directed. Well, it's not directed. Obviously, I can't see it, but just the whole setting of it gives off this quite creepy vibe.
Yeah, the whole setting does give a really creepy vibe overall, and a really sort of isolated feel overall, I would have said.
Yeah, you do get that sense of isolation the minute they're on the oil rig.
Yeah.
Which is it's quite sad that Victor Pemberton didn't return to write another Doctor Who script, even though you mentioned that he has appeared in Doctor Who.
Yeah.
But it's quite sad that he didn't get to write another story.
Yeah, the only thing he did for Doctor Who post this, I believe, was the radio drama The Pescatons with Tom Baker and Elizabeth Sladen.
Okay, because I think I keep referring back to this bloody documentary that I was watching the night. I think because he was actually in it. They did a brief interview.
Oh, nice.
And he was saying that he was appointed to be, I think, from what I remember, like script editor.
Yeah.
He actually wanted to write a story, and thankfully they let him, and he delivered again like a fantastic story. Yeah,
without question.
I think even just from watching that little brief interview, you can tell like he really enjoyed writing this, put a lot of care and thought into it.
I think it's quite a unique. It has quite a unique story, Fury from the Deep, because I'm not quite sure of the full story, but he proposed a Doctor Who story quite a while ago. I think maybe during the William Hartnell years, of a story featuring Killer Mud, which was turned down by the BBC and not done as a Doctor Who story, but then he adapted it into his radio serial called The Slide, and then that radio serial served as the basis for what would become Fury from the Deep. So a lot of elements from Fury from the Deep have been extrapolated from The Slide, and that never made Mud Monster story, as I'll call it, because I don't know the actual title of what that story was going to be called. So quite interesting, the origins of this story, as well as Victor Pemberton's origins with Doctor Who. As before Fury from the Deep, he did all of that, and he also acted in the Moon Base and script edited Tomb of the Cybermen, from what I know of, and possibly other stories.
Yeah, he's obviously a huge talent. It's quite interesting that Mud idea he had, which I can imagine probably one of the reasons why he got turned down was probably, even though it probably was a good idea, it was probably really quite ambitious and too expensive.
Yeah.
But I would have liked to have seen that. I think he would have done a good job of that.
Well, I would recommend probably trying to check out the Slide radio serial, which you can actually buy as a BBC radio collection CD.
Oh, you
I don't have it, but I would like to try and get it and listen to it, actually, because it is something that interests me.
Yeah, I never even realised that was a thing until he brought it up. But no, I would like to read the Target novelisation. I've got the audio book, but it's not quite the same as reading something.
Yeah.
I don't know, but yeah, because when I got that audio book, it was at the time when I couldn't find the radio collection anywhere. Well, I could find it, but they even charged quite high prices for it. So I decided to get the audio book, which was really well read by David Trout, who's Patrick Troughton's son, for those of you who don't know.
And has also acted in some New Who episodes as well.
Yeah, including Midnight. I don't know what else.
Last Christmas, the Inception one.
Oh, I can't remember anything about that story. I didn't realise he was in that. But no, the audio is great, and if you can't find the soundtrack, I would recommend either reading the Target book or getting the audio book. Just trying to experience the story someday.
The audio book is definitely well worth it if you are thinking of getting the audio book, but please keep in mind that it is very, very long at 6 hours and 55 minutes, so pretty much 7 hours.
Yeah, that's the thing about audiobooks. If you've got a decent attention span, then yeah, sure, go and get the audiobook. But I would suggest watching the recon of it, Loose Cannon recon, on Daily Motion, or download the soundtrack if you can.
Yeah,
because it's really, like, cannot emphasize how much I think you should go out and listen to this.
Yeah,
experience it rather.
Yeah, this is just unbelievable with regards to a Doctor Who story, and as we mentioned, it kind of works in all formats, I would have said.
And that's another thing as well. I think the black and white really helps as well. I think it'll probably work just as well in colour, but I think black and white really helps.
Yeah, particularly during the impeller shaft scenes in the 4th episode.
Yeah, definitely. And also, in regards to the animation, I think we've briefly touched upon this in our previous video, but with regards to the animation, because now the animations are designed pretty much to be in colour,
yeah,
I think it'll work fine in colour on animation. But it'll be quite interesting to experience it in different formats, given that the animation can be used for either optional viewing.
Yeah, I think this is one story where it would work quite easily in colour, save for a few scenes, personally.
Yeah, what do you mean? If it was like...
If it was released and animated in colour, which it will be, I think it will work probably just as fine as the black and white, maybe a little under, because of the impeller shaft scenes from episode 4. But other than that, I think the story would work perfectly in colour.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, the Macrosera animation works so well in colour. But I think the animations themselves are pretty much designed to be in colour, but they also work in black and white as well.
Yeah, they do 2 animations at the same time, so it's not like a afterthought, hey, let's post-convert this colour animation into black and white. No, they do 2 animations and do a colour animation and a black and white animation at the same time, which is fantastic.
Yeah, it is. It's quite baffling, but also it does make sense. But I'm really looking forward to that release so much, because it'll be good to see what the casual fan would think of it, like the casual classic Doctor Who fan would think of it.
Yeah.
Because they probably haven't experienced it in any form.
Probably not, no.
But also, just having Fury from the Deep on DVD, I can't wait for that.
I can't wait either. I probably buy every copy on site. I just love it so much.
Yeah, it's worth every penny, because I'm sure you'll probably agree that whilst I do love 1960s Doctor Who, it's not my favourite era, but I do love it in so many ways. I think this is probably a good example of 1960s Doctor Who at its best.
Yeah, definitely. It is an incredible 1960s Doctor Who story, I would have said personally, and it's a tough choice between whether Fury from the Deep or The Enemy of the World is my all-time favourite 60s story, I would have said personally, and which of the two are my two, and which of the two is my all-time favourite Doctor Who story, which really goes to say a lot about how much Doctor Who there is and how much I've experienced with regards to Doctor Who, even though it might be as many as some, but it is just an incredible story all round, and is an absolute triumph of 60s Doctor Who, and it is a shame that it doesn't exist.
I think this is probably my second favourite 1960s Doctor Who story, but it's definitely in my top 10 somewhere.
Yeah.
Might probably be in my top 3, I don't know, but it's such a... I do kind of want to say a perfect story. It's flawless, in my opinion. I would go as far as to say it's nearly flawless.
I would say that as well, definitely.
Because there's great acting in it, it's a great script, great monster, some creepy characters, great atmosphere, great setting. Just everything about it is quite remarkable.
Definitely, it is just such a remarkable story overall, and it's just incredible, and it's a shame that it doesn't exist.
I think if any of you are watching out there who haven't experienced the story yet and you're thinking about buying the animation, I would highly suggest that you do, because you are in for a treat when it comes to the story. If you like atmospheric stories, then this is up there. Even more so if you like Base Under Siege stories. This is, in my eyes, the ultimate Base Under Siege story.
Yeah, it is the king of Base Under Siege stories, definitely.
Everything that a Base Under Siege story should be. So I think we're nearly pushing on to an hour. I mean, do you want to got any favourite moments of the story? If you want to, don't know when you want to wrap this up.
I'm not quite sure how to wrap this up either, to be honest with you. The story overall is just fantastic and boasts so many wonderful moments overall. It's quite hard to choose what a great moment is in this story. All of the existing footage is fantastic. There's some phenomenal scenes that are included, I would have said, and that are existing. The impeller shaft scenes from episode 4, those exist, and I've got to mention how episode 6 is easily one of the greatest singular episodes of Doctor Who in the history of the show.
That episode in itself is a roller coaster of emotions.
Episode 6 is just flawless. Okay, sure, the helicopter part could have been cut out, but the rest of it is just cream of the crop. It is so good. Just the way its overall structure, how it's overall structured, and just the way it flows overall is just so fantastic, I would have said personally.
So when we talk about sort of emotional companion departures, I was going to do a little comparison of this, between this departure and this departure, which both of them are great departures. But with this one, it's built up. It's very subtle. Even though it's built up, it's subtle.
Yeah.
and it pays off so well. Whereas the one with Rose, even though it is emotional, but I think even though the acting is good and the score is good, it's a bit like in your face emotional, if you get what I mean. It's very over the top in some places. Like David Tennant's Doctor Departure, like over the top music and a bit of over the top acting. But in this, it's a very quiet, very sad Doctor Who moment, which is what I really like about it.
It is, and I would like to sort of draw up the interesting point of how episode 6's structure is very similar to that of the 4th episode of The Massacre, in the sense that the sort of big finale happens halfway through, and then you get this sort of beautiful companion stuff towards the end of the episode. And personally, I think with regards to the 2, this is the best out of the 2 without question.
Yeah, you mentioned The Massacre. It's in my opinion, I really like that story. It's one of my favourites.
Fair enough.
But no, I think this story is obviously the better story, and it's just handles everything so well.
Yeah.
Like, is Victor Pemberton still around? Is he still alive?
No, he died a few years ago, I think, sadly.
That's quite sad, because I know Deborah Watley unfortunately passed away. I was fortunate enough to meet her
several
a few
times
years ago. Yeah, well, no, just the one time, because I did send her fan mail.
Oh right, okay.
A couple of years later, but no, she's one of my favourite companions, if not my favourite, and just because of the fact her stories are so great.
Yeah, it's
like unreal.
Yeah, it is a bit sad in a way, because I remember there was this special press conference or whatever whenever the Enemy of the World and the Web of Fear were announced back in 2013, aka before, or in other words, actually before Deborah Watling's unfortunate passing. And there was a certain clip, I think maybe shown on the news, of Fraser Hines and Deborah Watling being interviewed about the whole recovery and the whole announcement of Enemy of the World and the Web of Fear being announced. And I remember that Jamie said that he really wanted to see Evil of the Daleks. Fraser, that he really wanted to see Evil of the Daleks returns, and Deborah Watling said that she really wanted to see Fury from the Deep returned as a story. So it's quite sad, really, that she died quite close to a fully visual version of the story being released. So if Deborah Watling was still around, I would be quite interested in finding out what she would have thought of the animation, as I think she would have liked it a lot.
Yeah, and also it's also sad that, I mean, they might not get found in our lifetime, possibly, but it's kind of sad that she never got to see it.
Yeah.
And also, even like any of her stories, really, that are missing.
Yeah.
But I hope they do like a little tribute to her in some form on the Fury from the Deep DVD, because I think that would be, if they didn't do that, I think that would be a missed opportunity.
They did that on the Enemy of the World special edition, which I still need to get.
Is that the special edition, isn't it?
Yeah, because the Enemy of the World DVD is just a skeleton, the standard one from 2013.
Oh, yeah, that's the one I've got. I might get it updated, but I just can't see the point at the moment, but who knows. But yeah, really, I'm probably going to order the steelbook I might even get both versions of Fury when it comes out, because it's that good of a story.
I think you have to, mate, because this is such an incredible story, and it's just going to be such a fantastic way to celebrate such an amazing moment in Doctor Who history and such an amazing story in Doctor Who history.
Yeah, it's going to be great, and as I've already mentioned, it's going to be interesting to see what the casual fan will think of it. And even though it is our animation, I think as a story itself, it's just so good. I'll be quite interested to see what the special features are on that release in regards to the story.
Yeah.
If they do anything. Because I think does the release come out in March? Doesn't it?
The Faceless Ones comes out in March, and Fury comes out in October, I think.
Oh god, that's quite a long way away.
Yeah, so it was literally announced a year before it was due to be released,
which is quite interesting.
But
at least it shows how much time they're going to spend on it, which I think they need to get it as perfect, well, not perfect, but as close enough as they can.
Yeah. And I think it's warranted the time they've got to work on Fury from the Deep, because it can be quite a excuse the pun, animated story in terms of the seaweed moving about and all the foam and what have you. So
yeah, it's going to be quite a difficult one to animate, but I'm glad they announced it when they did. I feel like literally a year to wait for it.
Yeah, but then again, we're going to get the Faceless Ones.
Which I'm also looking forward to. I can't wait for that either.
Yeah, that's going to be great. Although it's probably going to be a bitch to watch it and watch the cliffhanger at the end of episode 6 and thinking, oh, fuck, I can't watch Evil of the Daleks now.
Yeah, I know. But hopefully in time, in a couple of years or whatever, they'll animate that, which fully deserves an animation.
That would be amazing.
So I think nearly at an hour. Do you want to draw it to a close and give it a rating?
Yeah. So overall, I think Fury from the Deep is one of the greatest Doctor Who stories of all time, personally. As I mentioned earlier, this is a close contender for my favourite Doctor Who story of all time, I would have said. And it's a really hard decision whether this or The Enemy of the World is my favourite Doctor Who story of all time. And hopefully whenever and I just can't wait for the animation, really, because I'll have a much more fuller and more realised opinion on the story, I think, as this is one of the more visual lost episodes. But overall, this is one of my all-time favourite Doctor Who stories, and is an absolute triumph of 1960s Doctor Who overall, and is just simply one of the greatest Doctor Who stories of all time, I would have said, personally, at a 10 out of 10.
Yeah, I would agree with you there, and it's definitely in my top 10 or top 5 Doctor Who stories, and I just can't really think of anything else to say on it. That's already been said, apart from the fact that it's a masterpiece of a story.
It is. I don't really know how to fault it. It might be my favourite Doctor Who story of all time. It's such a tough call between it and The Enemy of the World. I don't know. It could very well be my favourite Doctor Who story of all time. It's just so fantastic.
I mentioned to you that I've got 2 joint favourites, those being Inferno and The Evil of the Daleks. So
yeah,
it's not a bad thing to have 2 joint favourite stories.
Definitely, yeah.
But obviously, there's a bit inside you that feels like for me, I feel like Inferno is so good that it is my favourite Doctor Who story. But
yeah,
both of them equally, just like together, I just think they're great.
And I think it can depend on moods as well, because Evil of the Daleks and Inferno, in my opinion, are quite different Doctor Who stories, as is The Enemy of the World and Fury from the Deep.
Yeah, very, very different.
Yeah, so definitely, and it's just going to be a really hard decision for me to decide between The Enemy of the World and Fury from the Deep to see which one is better. But probably are. I don't really know. I need to watch them more to like fully get a decision made. I would have said, and that'll be helped out by the animation.
Yeah, so have to wait for that. I think that's gonna wrap this up.
Yeah, that's sounds good. So, would you rate Fury from the Deep a 10 out of 10 as well? I bet you do.
Yeah, I would rate it 11 out of 10 if I could.
Yeah,
it's just perfect.
It is such a perfect Doctor Who story overall, and it's an absolute triumph of 1960s Doctor Who, and simply one of the greatest Doctor Who stories of all time. And I think a lot of people would agree with that, as it is one of the most praised Doctor Who stories of all time. And both me and my friend Harry can definitely see the hype, and all we will say is believe the hype with Fury from the Deep. Get hyped for the animation, because you are in for one hell of a treat with this story, as it is so freaking good.
Yeah, I think I can agree entirely there that it's. Can't wait for it. Don't know what else there is to say.
I don't really know what else to say either. Just we've rambled on for nearly an hour now about Fury from the Deep, so I think our overall message here is Fury from the Deep is fucking phenomenal. It's one of the greatest Doctor Who stories of all time. Get hyped for the DVD release. Get hyped for the animation, because your hype is definitely going to be paid off. Most likely, it's such a fantastic Doctor Who story, and words cannot begin to describe the sheer magic Victor Pemberton created with these 6 episodes of Doctor Who. It's an absolute triumph, and quite possibly my favourite Doctor Who story of all time. I absolutely love it.
Yeah, it's just incredible. Absolutely fantastic.
And I would have said that pretty much wraps up this foamy live stream quite a bit. That sounded really weird, but I would say that wraps up this live stream pretty nicely. So, like, favorite, comment, subscribe. I hope you guys enjoyed this review live stream of the wonderful Harry Williams Productions. Do you want to say goodbye?
Goodbye. Thanks for watching this live stream, and we hope you enjoyed the animation when it finally comes out.
Yes, enjoy the animation. It's going to be so worth it. It's just going to be so fantastic. But anyways, like, favorite, comment, subscribe. I hope you guys enjoyed this furious live stream, Pitch Girl Black and Harry Williams Productions dematerializing. And there we go.
So,